And another young man at the center of the storm in Ferguson, Dorian Johnson, a friend of Michael Brown. Now, he was walking with Brown when they were approached by Officer Darren Wilson right before the deadly shots. Dorian Johnson's attorney and former St. Louis mayor, Freeman Bosley Jr., joins us. Good evening, sir.
Freeman Bosley, good evening. How are you?
Very well, sir. All right, so I know that your client is not speaking because he considers himself a witness, or he will be a witness, but I'm curious, what does he say happened?
He doesn't consider himself a federal witness. He is an official federal witness. We gave the story several times. We met with the FBI. We met with the Justice Department. We met with representatives of the county prosecutor's office, the detectives, and met with them for about 3 hours. And they examined Dorian Johnson at length as to what he did when he woke up in the morning. And he stepped them through the whole thing. He told them about him and Mike walking down the street to the Ferguson market. He told them what they did when they got in there. He told them about the cigarillos. He told them about them walking out the store, walking down the street, and then being engaged with the police officer. He told them about the struggle at the car and the subsequent shooting resulting in Mike Brown's death.
Did he actually witness the shooting, or was he leaving the area when it was happening, your client?
No, he actually witnessed it. There was a shot fired at the car. The officer then let Mike go, and Mike and Dorian ran. There were 3 cars stacked up behind the officer's car because he had blocked the street. And Dorian ran and hid behind the first car. And then Big Mike runs by. Then right behind Big Mike is the police officer. After the officer passes Dorian, Dorian then looks up and he sees the officer in hot pursuit right behind Mike. He then sees the officer fire some shots, and Mike turns around and the officer shoots him some more and ultimately kills him.
Did your client say whether the officer and Big Mike, as you referred to him, did they have any conversation that your client overheard at any time?
Well, at the car, you know, the officer reaches out, according to my client, and grabs Mike by the throat. Okay, so you know that starts some conversation in and of.
Was that unprovoked?
Well, they're arguing.
The first confrontation, the first instance he sees Big Mike, he reaches out and grabs his throat. He doesn't have a conversation with him.
Well, here's what happened. They're walking down the middle of the street. They see the officer coming in the opposite direction. As he approaches them, they slow, the officer slows. He tells them, get the F on the sidewalk. Dorian says, I live right up the street here, officer. We're just going to keep on going. And they walk past him. By the time they get to the end of the car, the police car, the officer throws the car in reverse and speeds backwards and catches back up with them. Then they start arguing. He says something to them and they start arguing. They're close at the car. The officer then reaches out of the car with his left hand and grabs Mike Brown. Mike is big. He's like 6'4", 270. And so the officer really can't do much with him. So he kind of moves away from him. And then the officer now is grabbing his shirt. He's pulling him close to the car. Then as Mike is trying to get away, the officer pulls up a gun and says, I'm going to shoot you. And then Mike, I guess they're still arguing, and then all of a sudden the gun goes pow, and the weapon is discharged, and the officer lets him go, and they run down the street. So then at this point, as I had indicated earlier, Dorian hides behind the first car because there's 3 stacked up there. He sees Big Mike run by. The officer's in pursuit of Big Mike, and then as he passes my client, Dorian gets up and he sees the officer running close behind Big Mike, and then he fires those bullets, and then Big Mike then turns around, puts his hand up in the air, and the officer continues to close the gap, firing at Mike, and he's down. He's down and he's dead.
Hey, tell me, the one thing I'm sort of curious, Mayor, is that your client, at least I'm told, said that Big Mike was shot in the back, and the autopsy doesn't show that, which then makes me wonder whether sort of the cloud of what was going on is that your client may have confusion about details.
Well, you could argue that, but here, let's think about this. The man's running, police officers behind him. The shots are fired. He stops and he turns around. The autopsy report just released just said that one of the shots in his arm looks like it could have been shot while he was from the back. So that, you know, is not a perfect explanation of what he saw in terms of shooting him directly in the back, but he shot him and it hit him somewhere in the back, possibly along his arm, and he turned around, and the officer continued to shoot him.
Mayor, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Thank you, sir.
Good day.